Welcome back to Nazareth Podcast, the Catholic parenting podcast brought to you by the Catholic Schools of Brooklyn and Queens. I'm your host, Sophia Arnold, and I am here today with the one, the only, Deacon Mac. Okay, this has been a long time coming, you being on the podcast, so thank you so much for being in the studio, being on camera, being on the podcast. You were in radio for years, so this is really your world. You're the pro, so I'm just excited to have you here. It's going to be a really good episode.
I'm absolutely honored to be here. I love the work you've done so far. And it's touching a demographic that sometimes we forget about. You know, it's not about old men running Catholic schools. It's about, and primarily moms. That doesn't mean dads don't play a role, but primarily moms in their late 20s to early 40s, they're the ones who are making the decisions for their kids. In conjunction with their husbands, of course, but it's important that we reach out to them, and you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Well, it's good that you're here to represent Catholic dads and Catholic grandfathers, among many other things. I had to take notes because there's so many things in your bio that you have accomplished over the past.
It's just because I lived so far.
Well, I mean, you also. I can't remember exactly what the phrase is that you use, but you're like in your whatever year of Catholic education.
60. I've been in Catholic school since 1965.
So you've had some time.
Yeah,
as a student, you're now superintendent, principal and teacher at Sophia High School. You taught at Malloy University. You also co-hosted Religion on the Line. And not to mention, you're also a deacon, right? You have a couple things going on. Yeah. So it's awesome to have you on here. And of course, we cannot forget your representation as a Catholic father and grandfather. So as you probably know, all of our episodes start with what we call a grace and a grapple. It's kind of like a high and a low or a God moment throughout the past few days. Do you have your grace and grapple ready, or should I go first?
You go first.
Okay, awesome. The grace, when I was thinking about this, what really hit me was how much of a grace the Eucharistic rallies have been. I remember like the first few times that I was exposed to getting to go to adoration as probably, I probably went as like a younger kid, but when I was like an early teen, and I was very lucky to have parents that were very active in the church and took us to all the sacraments, all that stuff, and yet still I was like, what is going on with these songs? I don't get it, right? It's so cool to see the middle school students in our schools having so much access to that. It's really beautiful. And just noticing, like I have no idea what's going on in their heads, but just noticing that some of them are definitely touched by it. It's just so cool. So that's been a grace. Grapple. I don't even know if I have a grapple right now, which is good.
Good for you. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. You'll come.
In due time, for sure. But yeah, that's mine. What are yours?
So my grace would be the time we spent with our principals on Monday. Mm-hmm. So look, there's no mystery. It's been in the news and we've talked about it. Is we lost 10% of our schools. 7 schools were closed or announced they're closing at the end of the year. That's horrible. That's absolutely horrible. Hundreds of families are going to be affected. We can go through that all there. And so, but what it seems like I'm starting with the grapple, but what we did is we brought together the principals of our schools and grappled with the issue that we have here. And we did it in a unique manner. So we did it in a synodal way, which means encounter, but the synodal doesn't really work in English as well as it does in Italian, apparently. But the idea was to bring people together and give everyone a chance. So you and I are both pretty much extroverts, so we love to talk. But there are a lot of people, most people, think before they speak. I'm not saying that you don't think before you speak, but I don't.
It's okay. I've heard it from my mom.
That's our gift. But also, an introverted or more introspective person is going to take their time. This process allows everyone to speak. And you said in one of our meetings, when we did it as a team, that it's kind of cool that the Holy Spirit gets most of the time in the silence. So that was a grace. And we're still working with it. I sent out a summary to everybody yesterday. So we'll see where that goes. The grapple is, there's so many things that we need to struggle against. But the good news is, I think we're turning in the right direction.
Okay, let's dive in because we have a lot of different topics to discuss. This might break the record for the longest podcast episode.
I'm ready.
Just because we got a lot of places to go. We got a lot of questions. Let's just start from the beginning. You said it's your 60th year in Catholic education. How did starting as, I guess, a kindergartner, first grader in Catholic education, how did that form you and how does it shape your leadership now in Catholic education?
That's a great question. And so I grew up in the Bronx, and in those days, in the mid 20th century, you identified with your parish. So I was from Our Lady of Mercy in the Bronx, and someone else is from St. Thomas in Flatbush. Whatever that case may be, that's how we identify ourselves. So if you asked me, was I a religious child? I would say no, because we just did what we did. So the church was very much a center of everything we did. I was in the grammar school. My brothers subsequently went into the grammar school there. My mom and dad were, working class heroes. My dad worked with the MTA. My mom actually did the operator where she would plug things in. So that's like ancient history for you.
That's cool.
So it was. So I mean, we were working class heroes and doing the best we could. But the church was part of the breath that we took. So it's sort of like apparently fish don't realize they're in water. I didn't realize I was in the midst of grace, and that's what our world was. As I got older, I began to be able to articulate that and identify it. But growing up in it, it's just the way it was.
And so do you think now that, you realize that you get to work for the church and that is a huge grace. It's been a wonderful experience for me to realize just how cool it is that there are days where I get to go to Mass or to adoration, and that's literally part of my workday. Do you think that the students now who are in our Catholic schools, because it isn't, I think Catholicism is not necessarily as cultural as maybe it used to be, like what you mentioned, associating with your parish. Do you think students now are more aware of what an opportunity it is to go to Catholic school?
I don't think they realize it now. I think they just assume it. So I think that they see the value, but I don't think they have the ability to articulate and say, well, I had other choices could have been made for me. I'm glad they made this one. But when you look at our kids, and let's talk about those iterations. So my day, the church shifted from almost like a piety that was based in a mystery, wrapped in all kinds of things, and it was really kind of a barrier between the reality in which they lived in and the way in which they prayed and understood. And then, I'm not going to make this a history lesson, but World War II kind of changed everything, because you had Catholic nations being involved in the persecution of the Jews and others. You had Christian nation, United States, blowing people up with atomic bombs. So the church is like, whoa. So we moved away from the heart and we moved into the head. And so we spent many years like kind of just trying to understand the church and not encounter the church. Now, it's not an either or. Like, we need to do both. And so we need our kids to study scripture in a positive way. We need them to know church history. We also need them to know math and reading and be able to discuss and to argue a point and to do their math and the science. So, but with all that there, what I see with our kids here, and I see in your generation too, if I may, there's a return to the mystery. So we tried, I think my generation, we tried, and I think we still do, we try and solve the mystery or be able to measure the mystery. And the fact is that there's some things that we can't measure. So when you look, where are these kids like an hour and 15 minutes? By the diagnosis of ADD or ADHD. But I've never been diagnosed, but I find it really difficult for me to sit there for an hour and a half. Really difficult. And then I hear the kids. Well, actually, I don't hear the kids. There's a kid shuffling. There's a kid who needs the last clap. Yeah, that's kid stuff. But the overwhelming majority of the time, these kids are listening. They're praying. The music ministry that we've been able to have, they just do a phenomenal job. The priests who offer their reflections, it's very interesting. Each one has their own kind of bent on it. Each parish has its own flavor that it comes with it. But I don't know if we asked the kids if they could explain what happened there, but they can describe it, and it's something that they hold on to. And so, we used to tease about this idea of bells and smells, that the churches hold bells and smells, and that was seen as derogatory back in the day. I'm talking about the 70s and 80s. But the fact is that the bells and smells with the intellectual tradition of the church, the intellectual tradition of the church, the cerebral aspect of the church, has always existed. So that's not something we're embarrassed by, but that combination of the two, that mystery dances with reason, and that's what our kids are being exposed to. They can't articulate it yet, but down the road, they might.
Yeah, absolutely. So you grew up in Catholic education. Like you said, your parents were working class heroes. How did that path kind of lead you into working yourself in Catholic education?
It was really an accident. So I was studying to be a priest. So I was in the prep seminary in Rockville Center Diocese, which was St. Pius X. We have a great prep seminary here in Cathedral Prep. It's the same thing. The Cathedral Prep was called St. Pius X. And then I did 4 years there. I went there because my friends went there. I didn't have this great epiphany, Kevin, I need you as a priest. I went because my buddies went. It was a good school. And then after that, I decided maybe I wanted to go on to the college seminary. And then that was, I went to Cathedral College, which is now my office. We call it ICC now, Immaculate Conception Center. And then I did feel like I was called to be a priest. And I did 2.5 years in the seminary of the Immaculate Conception in Huntington. And then I realized that was not what God was calling me to do. There's a whole, that could be another story for another day.
Another podcast.
But I knew I had to leave, and I needed a job. And I wasn't going to be, please realize, I don't mean what I say now, but at my 23-year-old self, I'm not going to be some loser who goes back and teaches forever. Now, that's words that I used in my head. I was going to be an accountant, which was a disaster. As you well know in meetings, I'm not allowed to give numbers because I'm just horrible at it. A lawyer. Not quite sure I could talk the talk, not sure. I could probably be a salesman, but I don't know if I have the energy for it. So I ended up being a Lutheran teacher, which is obviously the completely wrong thing to say, and it's not accurate, but I spent my life there. And so I started at Bishop Kearney, and an old girls' school in Bensonhurst, and then I moved, I was there as a replacement for a sister who was in the medical leave. Then I went to Xaverian, and with a very short break of about a year, I worked for Catholic Charities on Long Island. I was at Xaverian for 37 years. It's there I realized that that's what God was calling me to be, was to be a teacher. It took me about 30 years for me to finally realize that was my vocation. It wasn't just my job, it was my vocation. And I mean, thankfully I've got to live long enough that I can say most of my life I understood what I was supposed to do.
Well, I mean, I think you talk a lot about the Catholic imagination, and we just, for those of you who are listening, the Diocese of Brooklyn just had our Lenten retreat, and we were blessed to have you lead the retreat.
Very kind.
And I was really struck by, this is not a new theme for Catholics, but struck by the theme that you emphasized of Catholics being the both and. And so the beautiful thing about like discerning and discovering vocation and calling and what you're supposed to do when is that like, it's just a lifelong journey, and it takes the time that it takes. And I'm sure part of that journey was good for you to figure it out. Like, it was good that you went to seminary for a little while. It was good to be a Lutheran teacher for a while, right? That's all just part of it. Switching gears a little bit, you mentioned a little bit about how maybe our current students and Catholics in my generation, there's a little bit of a shift from previous generations of Catholics. And I think we see just cultural shifts in the church as a whole. How do you think that affects our Catholic schools, and what do you think families are really seeking? And I guess if we have an answer, like, what do you think our Catholic schools are doing to provide that for them?
There's a lot going on there. So
Yeah.
So what a parent wants and what a grandparent supports is the idea that we're going to find a place where our children are going to be able to thrive. So we want a place that's going to respect them as human beings, that's going to push them as in academia. We believe that academics is really important. We believe that you need to have functioning skills and not baseline. We want to be the best. We want Catholic schools always were known for excellence. That didn't mean everybody was an A student, but everybody did the best they could. And so in my time, there were many of my classmates who were far brighter than I was on an IQ test, but I was able to find my mark and take my gifts and begin to roll with them, and they took their gifts. So that's sort of what we do. There's also this need, and I think there's a terrible ache that, again, your generation recognized, and mine was different. It's a different world. Remember, World War II ended 15 years before I was born. So, I mean, just to give you a context of that, and for people to listen, like I was closer to World War II than my grandsons are to 9/11. To kind of give you a context of that, because you remember 9/11, but again, World War II was that close. So they were veterans in their 40s when I was a boy, and they were actually World War I veterans when I was a little boy. That beat that as a babe. We had this function. We had a world, and we had a society that was built to protect it. Again, in sociology class, we could talk about the death of Kennedy and this 1960. We're not going to go there. But what I think is realized is that we've spent a lot of time in the wilderness without that foundation. And I see that with again, I don't want to sound like your grandfather, but your generation, the great video on some of your media, you do on your own, with the pizza and then going to mass afterwards. I mean, that was a lot of fun. I was like, oh, can I go? I was like, oh, no, I can't. Like, that's not my, I'm sure I'd be very welcome.
We can make an exception for you.
I'm sure you'd be very nice to me.
There.
But that's not my thing. But here's the thing. You have a sense of a need for the transcendent. Now, nobody said that when you were eating pizza that night. Nobody said that. But everything you did said it. Because there has to be, you didn't go to mass because it was like, it's the cool thing to do. You might go to a concert, but what's interesting is you guys have actually made it cool. And there's a lot of stuff online with people like ranking churches and doing that thing. It's a lot of fun. I follow all of that. But here's the thing. I think in the past, and this is where Catholic imagination comes in. I think in the past, the idea was that I had to be something different to let God love me. So I had to be super holy, whatever that means. I had to be super perfect. I had to be super, whatever it was. And then what we create is this sort of like anal retentive, joyless human being who's trying to make sure they do everything right. And there's a bad translation. We need to be perfect like our Heavenly Father is perfect. We can't. First of all, God is not human. He is in Jesus. Don't get me wrong. There's a bunch of things that if you take out of context here, who's a teacher, Jesus is so let's make sure we get everything in context here. But the entity of God, independent of the incarnation, is so radically not us. So what does it mean? So this is what I think Catholic imagination is. I think this is what our schools do. We allow people to see that the life that they live is a grace-filled life. They don't need to go to the mountain. They don't need to go to the desert. They don't need to go to the monastery or the convent or the seminary. Now, they may, and they may be wonderful places for them to be. But having pizza with your friends is holy. Struggling as a young person, where are the next 10, 15 years for me? That's a grapple. That's a grapple. That's a grace-filled moment. Relationships that succeed and fail, those are grace-filled moments. So the idea, like when I was a kid, I never thought I was a holy person. I was just Kevin living in this world. What I think our schools do is we allow our children and our parents to realize that they are exactly where God needs them to be. Not tomorrow, not yesterday, now. With all their problems, with all the blemishes and all that, that's where they belong now, and God will work with them. We don't need to find God. We need to recognize God.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to be listening back to this because that's.
We may have to do two. This may be a couple.
Well, that's beautiful. And I think when you mentioned about Catholic education being a place of building excellence, I think the first thing that I think of when I hear that is, okay, academics. Getting into a great Catholic high school and then getting into a great Catholic university or college. But the excellence, like you said, is so much more than that, and it really is in being able to see God in the everyday. Because any young person, any middle schooler, high schooler, college student, early 20s, it doesn't matter how great your grades are or what schools you go to. There's going to be difficult moments, but if you can realize that God is there because you got to go to adoration in 6th grade and you fell in love with the Lord that way, or because you got to experience the sacrament, so you have a devotion there, like whatever it is, that's something you can always fall back on, no matter what grades you're getting, no matter what's happening. So that's beautiful. And
if you don't mind, so I was not an A student. I know I shouldn't say that since I'm in charge of Catholic education and Brooklyn, Queens.
Me either. People don't realize that, but me either.
I was a respectable B+ guy. I did my job, but I remember my sophomore year in high school. I was a disaster. I went from like having 85s and 90s to having like 60s, 70s, and my mother's like, "Why are we paying for this if you're not going to do the work?" So when I look, I'm an old man now, but I do remember being 13, 14, 15 years old and saying like, "I can't do this," and then you look back and it's like, it was just a glitch. So no one action necessarily identifies who you are for the rest of your life. And we see that with the sacrament of reconciliation, we see that with our own development. But again, we're in a process. So these last 60 years, there have been greats and there have been lows, and there's been kind of in-betweens. But that's where when you look back, and you said this earlier in the conversation, I didn't waste my time in the seminary. And there's a lot of fruits that came from that. And I wouldn't be where I am now. And this is where God needs me to be. Mm-hmm. And this is where God needs you to be. Now, where you're going to be in 15 years, I have no idea. But now, I'm pretty confident it's here. So with our parents, right? So we have our parents who are struggling. They're trying to make sense of it. And kids are rough, man. Kids are rough. And I had 4 children, and they're all adults. They're doing great. I'm very proud of them. And the 2 grandkids, they're delightful. But they're a pain in the neck sometimes. They're moody. And they're, like, excuse me, you didn't cut my grilled cheese on a diagonal. What's the matter with you? Or it's a blue plate, not a red plate. We get it. These are all kind of memes that we can play off of. And it's very difficult for a parent to stop and say, this is a grace-filled moment. But it is. And you may not realize it until you have grandkids. You may not realize it until you see them walk across the stage and they get to the grade. You may not, who knows when you're going to see it. And maybe you're going to see it like that. Everything doesn't end perfectly. But even then, it's still part of the grace.
This is such good stuff. Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is all kind of connected to the Catholic imagination, and that's something that I think I wish more people talked about. I think you mentioned, you talk about it often, but it's a concept that is not, didn't start with you. Right?
I know, not at all. Not at all.
Because I really was introduced to it because of you,
Thank
right?
you. Good.
But it's something that has been part of, I guess, the Catholic worldview for some time. Yeah. How does the Catholic imagination and sort of your relationship to it and seeing God in everything shape how you lead our Catholic schools, how you maybe lead differently, how you kind of see our Catholic education system?
So that's a good one. And let me see if I can process this a little bit. Luckily, I'm an extrovert, so I'll do it out loud. But the Catholic imagination is this. And again, let me just define it for the listeners.
Thank you.
So,
that's great.
I wear glasses. I wore glasses since I was in 5th grade. And without my glasses, everything is very, very fuzzy. I lose your features. I see the color of your face and your hair and your blouse, but I can't I have to squint to do that. Mm-hmm. When I put the lens on, the lens smooths out the fuzziness, and I get a much more of a clarity. Catholic imagination allows me to look at the world, and I know God is involved in it. Now, it's not something you can teach someone. It's something you can model for someone. So there's an old expression that a Protestant imagination. We mean Protestant. Protestant is a big word, and they're a great tradition, and they have much truth to teach all of us. But what they have, if you allow me just to be a little academic, they have a dialectic understanding of the world. So their world is that the world and God are completely separate. And Augustine and St. Paul would certainly support that. So this is not like a bad thing. But for us, God's in the midst of everything. So they kind of search for a God who can't be found anywhere, and we can't run away from the Son of a God. He's everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. And that idea of in the midst of everything that we're doing, to me, makes this world worth living. Because there's a lot of horror out there. Right now, as we're recording this, there's two major wars going on. Gas has increased $1 a gallon. If you're budgeting $1 a gallon extra, it's going to change everything. You're trying to pay tuition, you're trying to do this, you're trying to save for a house, and now we're going to add it. And look, it's horrible out there. But with the Catholic imagination, we kind of say that God's in our midst. Like we're going to get through this. My family gets annoyed because I tend, believe it or not, you won't believe this, but I do tend to be an optimist in my world. I am.
Yeah,
I am.
I believe that, yeah.
And my thing is always like it could be worse.
Yes.
It could be a lot worse.
Yeah.
And I can still walk today, and my hearing works, and my eyes work, and people say, I can't believe this is being done to me. I had a woman once I worked with, and her father, her husband, and her brother were each very, very, very sick. And she came to me and she says, why is God doing this to me? And I said, actually, you're doing pretty well. Like your job is to take care of those guys. I don't know if I'm making this more cloudy, but the idea is that the struggle, we have God with us. We do this too. Again, my generation kind of pushed it aside, but everybody has a guardian angel. The only job of a guardian angel is to watch out for us. Do we believe that? We have myriad of saints that we can always call on. We literally have a patron saint for just about everything. I'm sure, I don't know if I should, there's a patron saint for video and audio podcasts. They just are.
Yeah, yeah.
We realize that we're part of a big, big, big community. We live in a very isolating world. And when you might experience that more, as a young woman in the city doing your thing, I got family, and everything's kind of established there. And my house is actually Gina's house, my wife's house, is like the still point. That's where they come to kind of recharge. That's where they know it's going to be okay. Then they go out elsewhere. So just so I don't make this completely off track, our listeners, your viewers, they're doing the best they can. They're juggling a million things. And it's not like I will find God when I get this stuff done. It's like I just have to realize He's already here.
I was on this retreat, and one of the leaders said something. It was in passing. It was not even this big moment of a talk or prayer or anything, but just the idea that God is always close to us. Always. It's only our awareness, right? And what you mentioned about the saints that we can call on at any time. Our guardian angel is there all the time. I think anybody who's listening to this probably does the same thing. Anytime I can't find anything, St. Anthony.
Tony, come around. Something's lost must be found.
And you know what? I always find it. I always said, do I find it when I'm freaking out and talking to myself when I haven't prayed to St. Anthony yet? Not really. But the second I call it St. Anthony, take a second. Might be later in the day, whatever, but I do find what I'm looking for.
You know what happens there? So, we're not superstitious religion.
Of course.
But at the same time, that prayer calms you down.
Yeah.
It realizes that I'm not alone. And whether there's a divine intervention, and I don't know how Anthony can find everything he's responsible for. I always have this theory that saints when you die, you get sent to a particular saint's organization. So there's the Institute of St. Anthony. So St. Anthony has thousands of saints who work for him. So Anthony's okay, Kev, yeah, I know you do. It's just keys. Yeah, I know what. Just tell him about it, right? Okay, I'm the boss, and he does that. And then we go across it. St. Jude is like the super antibiotic. Because my mom and most moms, and for the moms who are listening, you want to start praying to St. Jude because St. Jude is the patron saint of hopeless causes. And so there's that. Then above them is the Blessed Mother. And look, so people say, well, that's superstition, or that's you're trying to say, no, it's not. It's an imagination to realize that God finds His way to find us, and us to see who He is. And no matter how hard we try, we're not alone. The choirs of angels and martyrs and mystics and all the saints, we're all in this together. We're allowed to say, God, I'm tired of saying I'm on my own. I can't do it. But I like to know that I got somebody with me.
And I think ultimately when we talked about the pizza meetups that I'm doing with my friends, all these other young adult Catholics are going to in the city, and we're making videos about it, and that is a earthly manifestation of this idea of like, well, we all want to, we hope we can work for St. Anthony one day, right? We want to hang out together, right? Like the idea of, I grew up in the Midwest in the Bible Belt, and so I was like the one weird Catholic, and everybody else is like, that's wrong, that's right? Like you pray to saints, you're like worshiping Mary, right? And I always kind of thought of it as, and it seems so natural to me. I didn't get where other people didn't get it. I was like, well, they're just friends. Like,
that's the Catholic imagination.
Right. We know they're in heaven, and like, St. Anthony is my friend. Like, he'll help me with the keys. Might take his people a second to get there, but like,
Man, I'm a rookie.
yeah, he'll show up. It's just my friend. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's such the Catholic imagination, and that way is such a gift, and you see it in our schools.
Yes.
With the way that especially the little ones pray and learn about their guardian angels and learn about the saints. It's all in picture books and songs and stories, and it's not silly, because even if in 10 or 15 years when their mom is praying to St. Jude, like, please, can my son come to Mass with me? The reason that he might have that reversion to the faith or something is because remembering in a hard moment, hold on, I can ask my guardian angel for help, or hold on, I can ask St. Anthony or St. Jude for help. So those seeds that are planted in childhood imagination last forever. I mean, I think back on things from my faith that I learned in a picture book.
So there's a story, and you're probably not going to get it, and probably most of our listeners aren't going to get it, but the grandparents and great-grandparents can get it.
Right.
So the story is that a guy goes to confession, hasn't been to confession in 40 years. And he gets a very good confession. The priest is like, oh my God, brother, it's so good you're with us, that's great. He says, for your penance, I'd like you to say a decade of the rosary. And he gets ashy, and he says, Father, I don't know the rosary. He says, well, do you know the prayers to Our Father? He goes, no. Hail Mary? No. He says, Glory be? He said, no. He says, do you remember any prayer from you were a kid? He says, Father, I do. I remember the Angelus. Now, the Angelus is a prayer that we traditionally say around noon. Some places say it's 9, noon, and 3. Those are real hardcore. But it's just a stop in the beginning, and the angel of Mary, the angel of the Lord declared to Mary. It's a reminder, and we say a few Hail Marys and we move on. It's kind of lost favor, and we're trying to bring it back. We asked our schools to say it during Lent and Advent. So the guy says, you know it? He says, yeah. He says, all right, you go say the Angelus. So the guy's in front of the second, he's doing it. And the key to understand the joke is that everybody in the community would know, because the bells would ring at noon. And the bells would ring, and everybody would stop, and the ideal would be to stop. There's a great picture. I think it's where people are in the fields, and they stop, and they do that. All right, so with it, that guy goes back, and he listens, and he wants to hear the guy's prayer, because he's like, he can't remember that Our Father, he remembers the angels. And the guy's sitting for the Blessed Sacrament, he says, bang, bang, bang. I really don't think that's funny. But the idea being, he didn't remember the words. He didn't remember the context. He remembered the bells. And the bells are his prayer. And I'm getting old. As I get old, I get really welled up a lot more. I think it's like a hormonal thing I'm working through. But when I hear that story, I mean, it's an old-timers think it's a riot, by the way. The old-timers, I break them up when I'm talking to the ladies' guilds. They love that. But that idea that I don't need the words, I don't need it only to be intellectual. I can do it from a memory and a heart and pray with bang, bang, bang. Rosaries, I always say to the kids, hold your rosaries. Just hold them. That's a prayer. Bishop Brennan tells us that. Holding, like, so it doesn't always have to be a college paper. Sometimes it can be remembering bells, holding a rosary, and thinking of the smells of the incense and the priest and the monstrance. And even if they don't, but it's in their head somewhere.
And that's so much the tradition of our church, like the stained glass windows. Like, you don't have to read to know the Gospels. You just have to look. And even if you can't look, you can smell the incense, right? Like, it's the fact that the church understands that like we need to see, hear, smell, touch. We need all of our senses, right?
We're human.
Yeah, and it's good.
Well, yeah, being human is good.
Yeah.
Yes. Being human is good. Do we mess up? Terribly. Are we capable of hideous sins? 100% obviously true. Does God love us in the midst of that? Yeah. Yeah, he does.
Yeah. Oh, good stuff. Okay, we're going to take a hard turn to another topic because we have to talk about it. I want to hear about your time in radio. What was it like doing that, working in Catholic education, first of all? Because I've always heard about it, but I've never gotten to really, this is my time to like sit down and ask you a big question. I never get this much time with you. So what was that like? And what was it like to kind of, I mean, radio and media is traditionally very secular. What was it like to kind of merge those two worlds together?
So it's pretty cool. So it started in 06. And there was a radio broadcast on WABC radio, 77, which back in the day was like the stations, 50,000 watts. It still is. It's a radio. Like, I don't know about you, but I spent a lot more time with podcasts and my my audio books, things like that. But anyway, so we were on Sunday morning. At one point we were on from like 7 to 10, and then it was 7:30 to 9. So we were on a significant amount of time. So Rabbi Potasnik has been on the show forever. And he's actually met and became cardinals and archbishops and monsignors and priests and then a deacon to him. So his partner, he had to step it out and they needed somebody. And a priest is very difficult to get on a Sunday morning. So Rabbi Potasnik and I had mutual friends and they knew that I could talk well. And I don't even know me. So they said, would you do this? So they needed a clergyman on. And deacons and clergy, and so I went on, and I went on with a police commissioner, at the time he was police chief, Sal Casano, and we did the show. And I listened to talk radio a lot, so I had like an internal rhythm of it, and they liked me, and then they invited me back, and it was like, they said, let's test them. And they tested me for 12 years. So for 12 years, Rabbi Potasnik and I worked together, and he still is a very close friend and a good man. Now, the rabbi makes me look shy and reserved. And that's just to give you a context. Wow. So there'll be times now where I'll be doing a wake, and I have a distinct voice. I realize that. But so a woman will say to me, a man will say to me, "I know you," and I go, is it schools? Is it Marian? Is it the diocese? Is it They go, no, it's your voice. I go, did you listen to WABC? And they go, oh my God, you're the other guy. So everybody knew the rabbi, and I was the other guy. So I was definitely the second banana on there. But it wasn't like I was a junior partner. And I was able to give the Catholic perspective on it. We talked to entertainers. We had people from the Sopranos on. We had senators on. We had, this won't mean anything to you either, Joe Franklin, who had been, and you look up Joe Franklin, this guy's a character. Okay. He had been on television like forever. So we also had like people who were running soup kitchens and guys who were protecting immigrants and bishops. And so each week, we would kind of spend time. And look, the rabbi had his perspective, and when you're hammering the world to nail, so when you're Catholic, you see it through Catholic lens. When you're Jewish, you see it through Jewish lens. But we discovered that more times than not, we were on the same page. Yeah. Comedians will say, I was at Maniscalco, whatever his name is, they'll go like, Jews and Christians, the same organization, different divisions. And you see that. You see that with them. And it was a delight, man. It was a delight. It was Sunday morning, which sucked. I don't know if I'll ever say that, which stunk.
Why?
Because I'd be out, like if Gina and I got to dinner, or we'd have friends over Saturday night, I would have to get up at like 6 o'clock, boom. But I didn't regret it at all. I loved it. I kind of miss it. I'm out since 18. I did 12 years. 12 years on WABC Radio. That's a big deal.
That's a lot. Yeah. Wow. What was it like getting to interact with, you had these celebrities, actors, performers, people who maybe were connected to religion in some way, but also probably people who weren't.
Some antagonistic to it.
Yeah. What was that like to navigate that live on air? That makes me nervous as someone who's pretty comfortable talking to anyone and pretty comfortable in a performance setting. How did you handle that?
Well, the key there, I was not there to proselytize or
Right,
evangelize.
right.
So what I did is I listened and I asked questions, and we would go back. I think I may have lost my temper twice in 12 years. And that was because of me. Like, I should have handled it better. I don't know if the audience heard it. I knew I was like frustrated. The rabbi would reach over and grab my arm and say, like, lighten up this now. But again, our job was to talk and to listen. And that's a lost art now, because now it's my job is to indoctrinate you. And as soon as I disagree with you, I declare you're wrong and I push you aside. And whether you wear a blue shirt or red shirt, everybody does it. We didn't. We listened. Yeah. And I think I learned quite a bit from that, because in fact, you probably learn more from the people you disagree with than the ones you agree with. Mm-hmm. And it was a good challenge. I mean, people were overwhelmingly, people were really respectful. There were some real duds. We'd have people come on and be like, "How are you?" And they'd go, "Good." And like the worst thing on radio is dead air. I'm like,
Right.
All right then.
Yeah.
But they were fun. We had a good producer, and my job was to bring the coffee. So I drank coffee, and our producer drank like the most expensive thing in Starbucks. But it was my job, so I was the rookie. So the rabbi was more moderate. But Mike Civilli, God bless, he's passed on now. But Mike Civilli cost me about $10 a week.
Oh my God.
He's good thing he done. Mike Civilli was a very good man.
Oh, that's so cool. It really is a lost start to be able to just talk and listen and have conversation, and it isn't about one.
Back in the day when I was a kid, there was shows like, again, you can YouTube these things, but there was a show like David Susskind. And David Susskind would be on, it'd be the last show of the night. And sometimes it'd be a half hour, sometimes it'd be 2 hours. Like it was a very different world. And he would just talk to people. Mm-hmm. And now we don't. We have to perform. We have to. What are we hawking? What's our next project that we want you to know about? But then you're actually like we're doing.
Yeah.
We're doing. You sit and you talk and you share ideas. And I think what you're doing with your podcast is great, because it's touching bases, and you're bringing in a whole host of kind of people that you're doing great.
Thanks. Well, I think too the idea of just talking to people, whether they are in your world or not in your world, you agree with them or you don't. It's very Catholic. I mean,
yes,
universal.
Yes.
It's universal, right? So it's not like there's one way to be Catholic, right? Is it Pope Francis who said there's as many paths to holiness as there are people? So you can assume that out of all people, they're all gods of holiness, and a lot of them are going to disagree with you. So.
And they're going to do it the way they can. Look, obviously, we think Catholic's the best way. But even do we mean Ignatian spirituality, Franciscan spirituality, Dominican spirituality, the Benedictines? And I'm just stretching that. It's 4 of like hundreds.
So many, yeah.
And even among the rites, there's a Roman Catholic rite, but there's also like 20 or 30 more rites that are fully Catholic.
Yeah.
God, here's the deal. We can't paper train God. And the minute we try to, we create an idol. And the idea of dancing with mystery is kind of cool.
Yeah. And we don't have to know everything. It's good for
you can. See, so it's not a matter of like I'm going to be, I'm not going to pursue that because of my gracious humility. The fact is, I can't.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, you know what? I know what it's like to be a 30-year-old woman. I don't.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. So when I love people say, I know how you feel. I have no idea how you feel. And you know what it's like to be a 65-year-old man. But the fact is that we still can learn from each other. And then on the things we share, obviously there are things we share. But, when you're my age, I'm long gone. And hopefully I'm working for like a good saint. You know what I mean? Like I don't want like some bizarre pole sitting saint that doesn't get a lot of work. But I'm hoping to be one of the top ones there. But the fact is that you and I can share the journey for a little while.
Yeah.
We walk together for a little while, and we learn from each other, and then we kind of move on.
Yeah. Wow. This is good stuff. I'm curious, kind of focusing on being a Catholic dad, being a Catholic grandfather. That's obviously been a huge part of, we have whatever they say, little V vocation, big V vocation, right? How do you think that vocation, that work and calling to be a Catholic father and grandfather has influenced the way that you've been a Catholic leader?
That's really well put. So being a Catholic dad and a Catholic grandpa is really connected to being married. So in my case, I don't know if my wife will agree, but I think we have a great marriage. We've been together like 38 years, and we still get a kick out of each other. We still can make each other laugh. We can still aggravate each other and all the rest. But it all starts there. Now, I realize not every family has that, and that doesn't mean they're bad. It doesn't mean they're broken. It means they have a different program to work from. But in my case, we're together, and so that kind of articulates who we are. When they're young, the key is to give them the habits that they work. So, you know, if we again, I don't need to ask me for parent advice, but if we're too lenient on the little ones, we're going to create monsters. That doesn't mean we abuse them or we hit them. I never hit my kids, ever. I'm a huge man. What the heck am I doing hitting a kid? I mean, it's crazy. It makes no sense to me. I'm just making a nice statement. But my kids knew discipline. They knew what to know. I had the look. So did my wife. You know, we can just look and you knew, like, oh. And they grew up into decent human beings. Yeah. The key, when they got teenagers, when they became teenagers, it was a tough time. There's no question about that. But what I realized is that I had to forgive them for being young and pray they would forgive me for being old. Took a long time. Because I thought I could just will them into existence. Like to let them know that the pinnacle of civilization for a teenager was 1978, and everybody should live the way I did in 1978, which is absurd. But most parents believe that their junior, senior in high school is locked into what it's supposed to be. Music and culture and things you did and things like that. And then I took time, but I had to give them ability to do their thing. So, you know, their faith journey is their faith journey. And they each find it in their own way. Would I like it to be exactly like mine was? Yeah, because I'm freaking great. The reality is they're freaking great too, and they're going to find their ways. And so the idea of patience and hope is where they go. But what I find is, with my kids, is they found their way. They found their way. And it's one that makes the world better. It's one that affirms God. They don't do it exactly the way I do it, but there's no question of their relationship with their God. They struggle with things, and rightfully so. A lot of things to struggle with our faith. I mean, there's difficulties. There's been horrors that are perpetuated by the church in my lifetime. We can't let that go. To say it's a scandal. Scandal is like when two actor or actors sleep together upside down. That's a scandal. This is a hideous horror where people are betrayed. We're still dealing with that. First of all, our job is to make sure it never happens again. And then at the same time, it's making sure we take care of the people that were devastatingly hurt. I got hurt if I stubbed my toe. It's not being hurt. This is being betrayed and hard. And I think we're doing okay with that. I mean, we're struggling. We're not perfect. But my point with that is that, so the church isn't perfect. And that's where we have to kind of work, because neither am I.
Mm-hmm. And this idea that each one of your children's faith journeys is so individual, it then gives you freedom to focus less on, it gives you freedom to focus less on what, on you trying to control an outcome that will make you feel successful as a dad. Like, I'm going to check this box. And then everyone will know that I'm like the greatest dad ever because they followed in my footsteps in this way, right? Like, I'm not a mom, not close to being a mom, but like I can only imagine in the way, like I care so much about so many things. And when I really care about something, I want there to be a specific outcome, of course. I can't even imagine caring about a child so much. Like, of course you want a specific outcome. That's like all you want, right? Is to like see this vision and like, it's like, okay, like I'll make this happen, but you can't control what another person does. And that's good.
Yeah, a parent's job is not to create a mini-me.
Yeah.
A parent's job is to create, is to give the gifts and the support and the ability for them to be free human beings who can make choices. And that's our only job. And the way we do it, and this sounds so like put it on a t-shirt kind of thing, but our job is to love them. Now, does that mean reprimand? Yeah. Maybe we're punishing you this weekend. You messed up. There are consequences for actions. Sometimes parents forget that. When I was in the high school, a parent would say, like, he does nothing. I go, what do you expect from him? They go, what do you mean? I said, well, what responsibilities does he have in the house? So they sheepishly will say, like, well, Nothing. I said, then you shouldn't be disappointed. He's hit the mark. He's hit the mark that you've given them. And I can get away with that because I was old and gray and had a deacon title. But I mean, I remember challenging parents like that. You know, don't ask me to be the parent. We had a story. A kid came in, he was terribly rude to his mother. Terribly rude to his mother. And I was just a mom and him and me. So, and I can, especially in my day, I could be a little growly. And I said, whoa, stop. And I got this voice on, stop. I don't really care how you treat your mom. It's none of my business. But no one will treat any other human being the way you just did in my presence. I used to put like that all the time. So the kid immediately, like, he's in his place, he's there. We finished the meeting. The mother says, can I speak to you? Now, of course, she's going to thank me. Of course, she's going to say, thank you. I wish I could bring you home. Thank you. Hold it. She said, I understand why you have no friends. I said, what? I said,
What?
I said, you're right. I have no friends, but I don't think it's for the same reason. So she said, you're rude, and you, what did she say? Something to the effect of like, you disrupted my son's essence. And I said, whoa. I said, your son treated you like dirt, and that's not what we do here. Catholic education can say that. I'm not going to beat the kid. But we're going to make it clear, certain actions can't happen.
Yeah.
And if you can't be cordial, that might cordial to your mother, you can't work with me.
Yep.
And that's also the beauty of Catholic schools, which public schools don't have that ability, but we can say, we can't help you. This is not a place for you.
Yeah.
And that's also a gift.
Yeah. I am more and more grateful every year that I had the kind of parents who, like, we had chores that we had to, and I don't mean like make your bed, clean your room. Like, I was in charge of laundry, right? And this is not even like some huge expectation. I had the most lovely, relaxed, supported childhood.
And you put them in a box. Like, you weren't scrubbing them in the river. You know?
Right, exactly, right? I'm like folding them while like listening to my show tunes, right? But I didn't realize that not every kid had like really specific expectations and responsibilities and ways that you had to show up every single evening at dinner and make coffee, right? These things, and I'm like, well, everybody does that. I realize now, like, that's not the case. And I'm so grateful. Like, oh my gosh, like expectations and rules, etiquette for how you treat people and how you handle your responsibilities are essential.
But you learned that. I think you alluded to this just now. You ate as a family virtually every night.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now that doesn't happen. That happened in our house, and it happens with my daughter now with her sons. That there is a sacred time. We don't say sacred time, but
it's like you got to be there.
But it's a sacred time. Now you could bring, as they got older, you could bring kids to the table, but you're not going to say, I'm not going to eat in my room. Then you're not eating. If you don't want to be at the table, I'll respect that, which I really didn't do very well. But I'm not going to respect that. But we'll see you at breakfast. Like, this is what we do. And there's certain things that parents, I think sometimes some parents are afraid to be parents, and they want to be their children's friends. They have enough friends. You have enough friends. They need a mom and a dad. Now, you're going to be more than a friend to them. It's not like you're secondary off there. But there's certain things, and again, how do we support that? The dinner, everybody's at the dinner table. We used to do sort of like your grace and grapple would be like high and low points. And you had to go around, and you're like, oh, Mr. So-and-so gave me an F. It was like, why did she give you an F? But we were always at the table together. And even now, so obviously we can't do it the same, but we try at least 3 Sundays of the month, 2 to 3 Sundays a month. Everybody's at Nona's house. I live there, but it's Nona's house. And we gather, and it's meatballs and spaghetti, or it's a roast, or it's chicken, or it's hamburgers, or it's whatever. I mean, sometimes it's takeout. But we're all at the table. It's loud. It's obnoxious. People are depending on where everybody's mood is, like it's crazy. And but that to me is what heaven looks like.
Oh yeah, I so agree. Yeah. I remember, and this is a total aside, and then we're gonna jump in. I have one more question before you go into the rapid fire shorter questions. But I remember when I was probably when I had moved out to college in a dorm, and I think maybe someone said, "Oh wow, you talk a lot and you talk over people. Like you shouldn't interrupt people." And I was like, "Oh, means I'm friends with you. Like, that's what my family does. Like, every night of the week had to be a dinner, and you're expected to speak. And ideally, everyone's like talking over each other and having a good time, right? Then it's like a successful dinner. If people aren't talking that much, it means like,
there's something bad.
Yeah, something's bad. Yeah.
And then my boys, we have our son Matthew, great kid, is on the spectrum. So Matthew he struggles with some of this, and sometimes he'll be like, guys, stop fighting. I'm like, no, this isn't fighting.
We're having the best time.
Yeah, this is called Sunday. You know, he doesn't do it often, but you get the idea. And all three of the girls, and now the boys, and my son-in-law, God bless him, he keeps quiet, he keeps his head down. Smart man. I tend to listen more than that also, but. I love when they're there, and I think Gina, this is like the high point of her life when everybody's together.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so when we go to, Catholic fatherhood, and you gotta have expectations for kids, you gotta have them at the dinner table every night, right?
Can I get a couple more?
Yeah, please, because that's what I'm going to ask.
Okay.
What other practicals do you have if there's a parent listening right now?
So one thing is, give your kid a saint. Give your kid a saint. So everybody in my family, when I pray for them every day, and I pray for our team, and I pray for the bishop, and I pray for, but my family each has their own saint or saints. So Gina has Anne and Elizabeth. So, they have Mary's aunt and mom taking care of people. Lauren has Monica, because I think Lauren has aspirations to be St. Augustine. She doesn't know it yet, but I'm going to get her there.
Yeah.
Allie is St. Therese, the little flower, but she's expecting, so it's also St. Gerard Magellan and St. Marina. I just found St. Marina, so I'm kind of new to her. Matthew, Katie is St. Bridget, because Katie thinks she's a mystic, so Bridget, you got to love Bridget. Talk about Catholic imagination. She has a dream that heaven has a lake of beer.
Love that.
Exactly. Matthew has St. Carlo, obviously for that. And then I also, I met a man, I buried a man, Billy, who was a special needs guy, who he appeared to know things he shouldn't have known. So he's in that group. And then my son-in-law is Joseph, Joachim, and Peter. He's strong dad. Yeah. And then the grandkids have like the people in my life who've passed, who are I've canonized. So I have a young niece, grandniece, who died tragically at 4. Her name is, we call her Nora. So Nora's on there. Sister, it'll come to me and say, I had her in there today. But a sister, Josephine's sister, who's like one of our best friends, and I'm having like one of those moments, it'll come to me. Marianne Ambrose, Sister Marianne Ambrose. A deacon friend who just passed away, Jack McKenna. Another deacon, Jimmy Carroll. Steve McDonald, look him up. He's a New York hero. He died in 2018. Great guy. So they're in charge of my family. They're the ones. But find a saint for your kid and kind of have them involved in that. I think that's kind of really important. I think the key is when the kid does well, you need to affirm that. When the kid messes up, you got to give them a second chance. But let them know they messed up. We talk about in our office, toxic positivism is a waste of time, and it's really disastrous. Yeah. Because you're not always good, and it's okay to say that.
Yeah.
You messed this up. Not the end of the world. We're not throwing you out. We're not disowning you, but you got to realize guilt is not a horrible thing, and shame is not a horrible thing. If it becomes an end in itself, it is hideous. Yeah. Hideous. But this idea of compunction, like knowing that you did wrong, that's okay. That's okay. And to say you messed up, you give them their time out here, then you hug them. Then you get to step back again, and you forget. The key thing is also, a good parent doesn't hear very well, see very well, or remember very well. Because the last thing you would say is like, remember the last time you did this? Let it go. Let it go. Because you know what? I don't want that game played on me. I don't want you saying, you remember you did this? Let it go. Yeah. So selective memory, hard hearing, and poor sight are really good parenting skills. Love them. And that's not easy. Yeah. Sometimes it's not easy. But remember when one of the girls was young, she was having a hissy fit. And she said, I hate you. And I looked at her and I said, well, I'm not crazy about you either. But it's also a moment. So she says this, she's 11, 12, 13 years old, whatever it is. It's a moment.
Yeah.
This is not an existential declaration. It's a moment of a teenager whose brain is being rewired as we speak. Let it go.
Yeah.
Let it go. The other thing, Karen, you gotta take care of yourself. Gotta take care of yourself. If you're in a relationship, if you have a spouse, you guys gotta take care of each other first. There's gotta be times. Now, it might be walking around the block, maybe having a cup of coffee when they're in bed. It doesn't have to be, this dramatic event, but you need to spend time. You need to touch each other. You need to hold hands. You need to embrace. You need to be intimate when that's possible. All that stuff is really, really important. It's like the airport. Put your oxygen on first, and then take care of everybody. Because if you just give, you're not building up. I know that sounds like the end of like a magazine article or like Reddit, something like that, but this is something.
No, this is good. This is like, all of our listeners can be taking notes on this. Like I always think it's so good and I'm so lucky to get to do these podcasts because I get to hear it first and soak up all the knowledge.
You got a great boss.
I know, right? I'm the coolest boss. We're recording in his office. He let me take over. But talking about both kind of the meta level, the broader things, these ideas, but then also practicals are so important. And these things to write down, to be thinking about, okay, I'm going to do the same, I'm going to do this, I'm going to put my oxygen mask on first. Those are the things that can allow you to then think the broader thoughts too. So this is wonderful stuff. We could just keep talking forever.
You have to invite me back.
Yeah, well, you're coming back. That's assumed. All of our episodes close with kind of shorter, rapid-fire round questions.
Which is how I interviewed you.
Yes, which is actually where I got this idea, because I thought that was the coolest thing. That I'd never done that in a job interview, right? And so I got the job, so I think it's the coolest thing, right? Okay, so if you're ready, we'll jump in. And then, of course, if you have more thoughts, it doesn't have to be as rapid fire. You can of course, explain. Do you prefer a vigil mass or a morning mass?
Vigil.
Yeah, me too.
I like to sleep in.
Favorite Shakespeare play?
Oh, wow. Very cool. So many.
I know, right?
If I had a bullet to my head right now,
Yeah, in
so
this
you
moment.
see, Jesus.
Okay, nice.
These men, these honorable men, that's just a great, if you haven't read it or listened to it, you'll understand the world.
Yep.
But so Lear is good and Hamlet in
Oh,
a way.
yeah. It just depends on the moment. Yeah.
But I'm so glad you think Shakespeare is important. He is.
Essential.
If you're going to be civilized.
Yes. And I think that this is a whole other thing, but Catholicism and Shakespeare, you can understand a lot of Shakespeare because of the Catholic faith.
Catholic
And
education.
Exactly. Everywhere. Yeah. English class or math class?
English. So my degrees are in English, theology, English philosophy, theology, and administration. So 3, English, no doubt.
Yeah. But you thought you might be an accountant?
No, my brothers, not me.
Okay.
Oh, I never thought that and said that, but there was a better chance of me being a dinosaur.
Got it. Favorite restaurant you've been to lately in Brooklyn or Queens?
Oh man, that's another tough one because there's so many great ones. Wow, I'm gonna get jammed up if I go to the other ones now. So Gargiulo's in Coney Island.
Yeah.
Is great. Parkside up in Queens is great. Michael's, so I'm doing the whole Italian thing there. Those 3 Italian ones are good. Bacco's in Queens. Those are my 4 favorite Italian places right there. I'm just gonna leave it at that because I'm gonna get in trouble.
Perfect. And lastly, a saint that's been inspiring you lately.
Peter. I love Peter because he takes 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, and he doesn't get it right, and yet he does. And his end story, is that he sees the persecution in Rome, and he runs away. This is legend, but it's still a great story. And so he's running away, and he meets the Lord on the road, and the Lord's going the opposite direction. And he says, "Where are you going?" He says, "I'm going to be with my people." And be turned around, and then demanded that he be turned upside down, saying, "I'm not worthy to die the way my Lord did." So I like Peter because he's a screw up, but he never gives up. And he's a leader who doesn't really know why he got this job, nor is he adequate for this job, nor can he do this job, which I may or may not identify with. But Peter's my guy now.
Oh, I love that. So good. Okay, Deacon Mac, we already know there's going to be a part 2. But this part 1 has been incredible. we laughed, we've cried, we have big idea thoughts, we have practicals, we've got it all. And episode 2 will go really even more in depth.
Stay groovy.
Stay groovy.